Well, 4 down, 2 to go. 4 debates history, 2 weeks until one Mitt Romney hopes to make history. If he does, it won't be his last 2 exchanges with the president that will decide it, or his running mate slugfest with the vice president that will move it. It will be Mitt Romney's opening exchange with the president that will seal it. If the governor goes on to win, he can trace it back to the very city that coronated Barack Obama, the Democrats' nominee, in 2008. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and they say you never get a second chance to make a first impression. When all is said and done, written and rewritten about these debates, such will be said of the first debate, the one in Denver, the debate that created a stir and, for Mitt Romney, momentum, the debate that proved he is up to being seen as presidential. That inimitable moment to make that good first impression, because life rarely affords you a second opportunity. That was the chance that Romney needed. Despite less than convincing follow-up performances, maybe the rest doesn't matter. That was the debate that got voters thinking Romney was just as likable, just as capable, maybe just as ready, who knows. Maybe, just maybe, that was the debate that made Mitt Romney a possible president. We will know in 2 weeks. Here's what we know now. Romney is as competitive as he is because what he did back in Denver. The rest doesn't matter. That may very well have been the debate that proved the former governor did matter. 2 weeks out to these very close election watchers on how this is all shaping up. Independent Women's Forum's Sabrina Schaeffer, TheHill.com's Bob Cusack, and our own Sandra Smith. Sandra, that was the debate that moved the needle, the first one. And try as the president and vice president have in follow-up debates, too early to say now in this latest, neither really has managed to move the needle back for the Democrats. What about the importance of that opening debate and how it set and continues to set the tone for this election 2 weeks out?
Well, Neil, for a lot of undecided voters, when we went into that first presidential debate, there was that cool factor that Romney still seemed to be lacking, and that likability factor. And when he came out with that first presidential debate, he had it. He controlled the environment. He controlled the format of the debate. He had Obama frazzled, and he really came out and showed the American people how Obama's policies over the past 4 years have failed them. He was extremely effective in first impressions or everything. That is going to stick with the American voters.
You know, Bob, I follow these futures markets that trade bets on how the election will turn out. And while it still favors the president, and while bettors, those putting money on the line, think the president will win, never has it been this narrow. And I can only trace it back to the first debate, which seems to show that Barack Obama was on an equal footing with Mitt Romney on an equal footing with Barack Obama, and it sort of changed the landscape for debates since. What say you?
I agree, Neil. I mean, that first debate was such a thumping. You can argue either way who won the second and third debates, but the first one changed the whole dynamic, changed the whole race. It was a complete game changer. And you look back at George W. Bush against John Kerry and Ronald Reagan against Mondale. They had bad first debates, but it wasn't as bad as President Obama's first debate. And I agree that history will show that if Mitt Romney wins this, and he has the momentum, still a little bit down in Ohio. I think he's got to win Ohio. But if Mitt Romney wins, it's because of that first debate.
You know, Sabrina, polls are all over the map, and I never like to put stock in one over the other, so I just look at trends and the Real Clear Politics moving averages. And they don't seem to show much bang for the poll buck for either the president or the vice president after arguably getting the better debate points in follow-up debates. Does that take a little more time? Will it materialize? Is the first one the one that counts and the impression that sticks? I mean, people forget in 1960, Jack Kennedy and Richard Nixon had 4 debates, right, but everyone seems to remember the first one. What do you think?
Well, I think that first debate is the first time that so many Americans were actually even tuning into this election. Yeah. For so many, Americans who have busy lives and are taking kids to school and going to work, this might have been the first time that they sat down and really paid attention to what was going on. And what they saw was a president who was not up to the ability to defend his record for the past 4 years, nor did he seem to have a clear path moving forward for the next 4 years. The thing that I really took away from all of this is that Romney didn't just sort of walk away from that debate and go about his business. He really has been able to manage that momentum, and now he's reaping the benefits with this enthusiasm factor. Looking at the polls, that's where Romney is really trumping President Obama.
Now, again, this could be fleeting 2 weeks. The world could change, Sandra, but I'm always reminded of the advice given to Ronald Reagan in that one and only debate he had with Jimmy Carter, his handler, saying, don't come off as a nut. In other words, look presidential, look calm. You could do that, humor thing and kidding thing, but don't go too far. And I'm wondering, that was obviously what Mitt Romney was trying to do last night. He wasn't trying to get too argumentative with the president, didn't want to get in a drawn-out debate on Benghazi with the president. My critique was that he missed a lot of opportunities being so reticent. Be that as it may, is he presidential in the eyes of people who might have been leaning one way or the other, or is it ultimately going to be decided on you like the president's policies, you don't like the president's policies, no matter how good or bad the other guy looks?
Well, I think that in the first debate, that's for a lot of the undecided voters, that was the first time that they really saw Governor Romney as a possible president. They saw him as presidential, and I do believe that he carried that throughout the presidential debates, the next two after that, and last night. As you said, there was no major gaffes. He kept his cool. He kept his calm. He had criticism of President Obama, but it was mitigated to a point. So as long as he continues this presidential look that he's got, I think people are in favor of the fact that he's the guy who's come out, the business guy who's come out and said, I'm going to fight for you. He's come out passionate. He came out passionate in that first debate and said, there's 23 million people out of work in this country. I'm going to put you back to work. And he's stuck to that message, Neil, and I think that's what's working for voters right now.
Bob, ultimately, if we look back, let's say there is a Romney victory in 2 weeks, way too soon to start even making that leap. Will we trace it back to that first debate when he appeared to be on an equal footing with the president? I mean, he scores well on the same likability, the same approvability, for lack of a better word, that he's even-keeled going out there now as far as comparisons are concerned.
Right. Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, the president's campaign had done a very good job, I think, in trying to define Mitt Romney. But in that first debate, I think a lot of viewers who may have been leaning Obama said, wait a minute, he's not a vampire. He's not that bad. He's not as unlikable as I thought he was. And that equal footing really helped Mitt Romney because, yes, so many people, they do have busy lives. They're not paying attention until they have to pay attention, and now is when they're paying attention, and that's why Mitt Romney has picked up these, crucial few points in the polls, and he's gaining ground in Ohio.
Sabrina, where did those voters come? You could argue that there are only so many undecided voters. I kidded last week in Hempstead, the 82 people that gathered in that room who were allegedly undecided. By the way, I didn't believe that for a New York Minute. But those are the only undecided voters in the country. So I can only be led to believe now that the support that Romney has gotten since and throughout has been coming from either lukewarm or soft Obama supporters or new people coming out of the woodwork. Well, what do you think?
Well, actually, I think you hit on such an important point. There's two ways that these candidates can get more support. Either is by increasing their vote share from that narrow sliver in the middle of those undecided, or by ramping up enthusiasm. And I think that if you look at the registered voters, Romney hasn't actually improved his share of registered voters since last January. It stayed around 43 or 44%.
By the way, which is more reliable? It's not registered, it's...
now it's likely voters.
And the argument for likely is that they're more, as the term implies, likely to go to the polls.
Yeah, they're the motivated voters, so that's really what we're talking about now, and it's really interesting to see how he's surging ahead in those likely voter polls. So I think you're absolutely right.
One quick market read on all of this, Sandra, maybe you can weigh in a little bit, is part of the concerns for the sell-off, despite some lousy numbers we're going to get into, is the prospect of a Mitt Romney victory. If you can flip this around, it goes something like this. He's going to go after the Fed. He's going to go after these big rescues. He's going to go after what he has called an over-accommodating, over-aggressive, going way beyond its license, intervening Federal Reserve. And that Ben Bernanke, his days are numbered. He certainly won't be reappointed, but he'll be facing a president who doesn't like one bit what he's doing. And the markets don't like that. What do you make of that?
Well, let's not forget one of the best quotes coming from the first debate was actually about the markets. And he said that Dodd-Frank, when he was talking about how Dodd-Frank was the biggest kiss to New York banks from president ever, he said that I would repeal and replace it, talking about Dodd-Frank, something he says has squashed the small banks in this country. So there's certainly going to be some optimism about that. But Neil, no doubt there's going to be a very there's going to be a very unbalanced response in the markets that's going to take quite some time to get a true read on how these markets are going to respond. But one thing's for sure is that you talk to any small business owner or anybody working on Wall Street, and they see Governor Mitt Romney as better for business. And at the end of the day, that's going to be better for markets. And his tough energy policy, look what's happened with oil prices, Neil, since Mitt Romney's been gaining steam in the polls. Oil prices have been coming down. He's been saying more drilling, Keystone Pipeline.
So you think that's the correlation? They've come down because it looks like his prospects are going up?
I think that it's not unreasonable to make that tie. That would be very bearish for the oil and gasoline markets if we were to see Mitt Romney put in office an approval of that Keystone Pipeline and more drilling open on American soil.
Guys, thank you all very much. We shall see. And remember, if we're wrong about, fine-tuning and tracing all this to the Denver debate, we will just destroy this digital tape. Is it digital? It's digital video. It's something. We'll have it removed. But if we're right, we'll keep playing it over and over again.